Today's sponsor is brought to you by Godtrepreneur. Godtrepreneur was created to remind entrepreneurs to always keep God first. Godtrepreneur has become a place where not only entrepreneurs, but anyone can learn about what it means to put your faith in Jesus Christ. Their goal is to help people learn more about why they believe Jesus is the truth, while also helping people learn how to defend their faith. Godtrepreneur also provides marketing services such as social media coaching and website building to Christians looking to grow their brands. Plus, they have some pretty cool merch. Go to godtrepreneurbrand.com and learn more. How you doing, man?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you for hopping on tonight. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about, because, there's in New England, I find that with everything that happened in the beginning, it took a little bit for New Englanders to kind of, I don't know, get through the BS of what was happening. There were only very few people that actually spoke up about a lot of the corruption that was going on, even though the corruption in Boston has been going on for a really long time.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting to see your page and to see your take on and a lot of it is kind of really funny. I mean, you go in on on some of these people.
Yeah.
But it's good to see because there's a couple of other accounts from Boston that I followed, and they don't mince their words. They're, just like people from Boston. We don't care about what people think. So tell me about how you decided to expose a lot of the stuff that was happening in Boston.
Well, I've sort of I've kind of always been where I currently am politically. And so I've always been an outlier in Boston, and increasingly more so even in New England over my life, I guess. I'm 35 years old, and my parents are from Wellesley. I grew up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. My cousins live in Connecticut, Vermont, Maine, so very New England based family. And having my parents being from Wellesley, it's pretty much always been blue my whole life. And I guess I throughout my life, you could see it creeping into New Hampshire even more so than it had been when I was when I was growing up in the 90s. You can just see it all. So I was kind of always where I am politically, and I moved to Boston in 2000, I don't know, 7, I think 6 or 7 for school. Mm-hmm. And that's when I really got my first taste of kind of how crazy it was here, and how it was just very different than it was honestly, it was even more than I imagined. And that kind of, at that point, so mid 2000s is when I kind of dove a little bit deeper into the stuff that I believed. But also, it was the first time I really explored what the other side believed. And in exploring what they believed, it only reinforced everything that I already believed. Mm-hmm. And I actually ended up becoming more interested in studying their stuff than kind of diving deeper into my own stuff. And through doing all of that, I know this is kind of a long-winded answer, but in doing all of that, that's kind of how I realized basically what was going on in not just, Massachusetts specifically, but really just the left in general. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And then it just becomes, once you do see it, it becomes so obvious with everything that you know how to attack it, and you get better and better and better at attacking certain things because to ask questions and all of that stuff. So when coronavirus came around, I work in finance, and a lot of the supply chain stuff it wasn't impacted at all like it is right now. But in November of 2019 it was starting to impact the financial world in a little bit, in small ways, and enough so that it was making headlines. So I kind of saw it coming, and I didn't know at that point the severity of the BS that would come with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I at least it was on my radar, I guess.
Right. One of the things that, this is like really off topic, but so I was born in Massachusetts and then I moved to Puerto Rico.
Okay.
And one of the things that I wanted to do was I got a softball scholarship over there. And I wanted to play here. I wanted to come back to Boston. And one of the things I did was I applied for school. I applied for colleges in Boston. And one of them, they all came back to me asking me for a green card. And I said, wait a minute. If you're a university asking me for, even if I was born in Puerto Rico and you're asking me for a green card, why would I want to study at your institution? You're obviously a moron. Like
Right.
you're obviously moronic. So at that point, I decided just to stay where I was.
Yeah.
I didn't think the education would benefit me at all, but I see a lot of people that I had associated with that I had met throughout the years that had developed, it wasn't, an indoctrination that you could see up front, or you could see really at the time, but I could understand why they believed what they believed because of the school systems out here.
Yeah, it really does start with education, and I think so many of these problems that we have are solved with education. And it's not just what you learn, but it's really how you learn. And I know that sounds cliche to say, but I think one of the most important things to learn is to just always be asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever something comes up, whenever a controversial issue comes up, it should be natural if you know nothing about it. Like half of the world, certainly half of the United States, at least, if not more, couldn't even locate Ukraine on a map 2 months ago. And now everyone has this really strong opinion on Ukraine and Russia. And it should make people wonder why. Like, why do you feel so strongly about Ukraine? And it's fine if people do, but they should at least be asking questions like, well, what's actually going on? How did we arrive here? And the process of asking questions is, I think, completely missing from education and from the process of learning. And it's so important. And I don't even know, I mean, I do know how, like, the left doesn't want people asking questions. So I know that's kind of fundamental to their ideology, and it allows them to really indoctrinate. But it's so basic, and it's so obvious that that's how people should learn. And you should do it with everything. You should do it with math. You should do it with science. You should do it with absolutely politics, everything. And that's one of the most important things that I think is missing from education, is teaching young students and young kids to just ask.
So right now, when I was in school here, before I moved to Puerto Rico, we had critical thinking classes. And today, I've seen kids come home with, or their classes, those classes have been swapped out for conspiracy theory. The class is literally called in high school conspiracy theory. And I'm a Christian. I don't know if you are, and I don't really, no, I'm not here for that. But like, okay, so this is obvious. This is a Christian, the official Christian flag. So yep. I'm a Christian, and one of the things that one of my stepdaughters came home with, she said my teacher had talked about how Christianity was a conspiracy theory.
Oh boy!
And I said, what are they? Schools. And it's the rules are always, for you, but not for me. And with schools, they're not supposed to be getting into religious or political things. They're supposed to be losing their funding if they do. Yeah. But however, that doesn't apply if it's the other side, because obviously these schools are teaching these Marxist ideologies, and they're not losing their funding at all. They're actually getting more funding
Yeah.
for it.
And
So,
yeah, sorry to cut you off.
no worries.
It's one of that topic specifically that I always say is a religion is just an organized system of beliefs. That's the definition of religion. And if you know that that's the definition of a religion, then you would have to categorize leftism or Marxism as a religion. It really is. And
Right.
abortion is like one of the greatest sacraments of that.
Good. That is a good point.
And all of these things, like all the gay stuff and LGBT stuff, it's not just that they want people to accept that, which is fine. Everyone has different views on that. It's that they need to force you to accept their religion, because if your religion, like Islam is against it, Christianity has their views on it. There's certain sects of Christianity that are more lenient than others, but everyone has different views on it, but the left doesn't. They have their view, and they need you to accept it, and they need it to be a part of your religion. They need their religion to be a part of your life, and if you don't, you're a bigot. Whereas if you say the Pledge of Allegiance and you mention God, that somehow offends them. Right. But they don't factor in that parts of their religion might offend others. So it's a complete contradiction. And another thing that people often mistake is this whole idea of separation of church and state. It really comes from, I don't remember the name of the letter, but it comes from a letter that I think Thomas Jefferson wrote. And it was really, do you know about this?
I do. It was in Virginia.
Okay. So it was really just about the states forcing a specific religion on the people of that state.
Right.
And it's been completely twisted. They take that one line from that letter completely out of context, and they now force this on everyone. And even more importantly than that is this whole separation of church and state. It should have been where what it actually means is like separation of church from state, meaning the state is not supposed to get involved in the church's dealings, like the church's affairs. And the things that the church was dealing with were the social issues like homelessness, poverty, health, sickness, education even. So all of these things the state was supposed to stay out of. And because of that one line taken out of context, it's completely changed. And I don't know when, you probably know better than I would, when that came up in court to the Supreme Court regarding like the school. It was sometime in the early 70s when they got rid of saying God in school or something.
Yeah. And that's the excuse that they used, but it was completely twisted.
Yeah.
It wasn't used in the same context.
Right. So it's obviously changed how things are done. And this whole like idea that leftism or Marxism isn't a religion is just absurd, and it needs to be called out.
Right. What an interesting, I've never actually heard it said that way.
Yeah, when I think about a lot of these things, the best thing that you can do when you're like debating someone or when you're talking to someone from the other side is you have to take their word for it, because a lot of people from the left will just assume that the right or Republicans or conservatives, whatever you want to call that group of people, they'll assume that they're either they just like a capitalist is just like greedy or something like that, or that they're racist, or that whatever the pejorative is, they'll just assume negatively about you.
Right.
And you have to start from a place of assuming that the person you're speaking to is coming from a good place. So even if I'm talking to someone that's a communist that wants to save the world with communism, and this is how we're going to do it, I have to first assume that their feelings are genuine. Like that's what they actually believe. They think that this is the best way to go about doing that. If you know that or if you grant them that, if you allow them to have that as their starting point and you trust that they're coming from a good place, you're then able to have a more productive conversation and maybe change their mind a little bit, because if you find out like, oh, here's the stats on communism, it's not good, they might be more open. But if you just come at them like, no, you're
right.
just tyrant,
Yeah.
they're not going to receive that too well. And the same goes for the capitalists when you call them when people call them whatever they call them.
Right. And those conversations, my husband actually has mastered that. He used to train people with like people skills and stuff like that, and he has mastered conversations, I will say, online, with social media. I don't care for that. I'll just, I'll just make a factual point and then I'll leave you alone. Like, don't come at me. But my husband has mastered, why do you think the way that you think? Why do you believe that? Where did you learn that from? He asks a lot of questions, and that really does, especially on the forums here in town. I don't know if you're on your like local town forum, but those guys are brutal on like Facebook. Oh my gosh. And I live in a small town south of Worcester, and they're the meanest. They're so mean. But my husband has mastered when it comes to town stuff. He got involved in town stuff like 2 years ago. I mean, those guys all have oxygen tanks. They're old as dirt. You know what I mean? And he's the youngest dude in there now, because not a lot of people know where the town meetings are. They don't advertise them. And when he goes in there, he goes and he asks a lot of questions, and it gets people thinking about, wait, why do I believe that? You know what I mean? Coming at people, and it just happens with everything else. You do have to build some kind of an emotional trust with someone before they're open to receiving anything that you want to tell them.
Yeah. And I'm definitely, I think I'm better in person than I am in like in the comment sections online. I pretty much, I wouldn't say I exclusively just go off like as a troll, but I'm pretty harsh. But that's mostly because there's so few time, and I've done it so much that it's difficult to like really talk to someone and convert. So I just do like a lot of clown emojis, but every now and then I'll go into it with someone and give like a detailed response. But it kind of depends on what the actual issue is and how deep I care in that moment of getting into it. But it is when you're actually talking to people, or more importantly, like you mentioned the example of at a town hall or something, when you're in front of an entire group of people, it's important to keep in mind that if you're talking to one person and you're disagreeing with that one person about whatever the issue is, that there's another 30 people in the room, or however many people that are in the room, and you don't, like, the person that you're speaking to might not change their mind, but if you can get everything out there and articulate it well and hear everything that person has to say and overcome that, the other 30 people are going to notice. And so it's still important to kind of go through that motion, even if that one person you're actually speaking to isn't hearing you.
Right. That goes for everything.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really important. And it's one of the things that I think I actually posted about this like probably a month ago at this point, but one of the things that, like, I call my name on here is New England Traditionalist, and that is meant to mean very specifically what it says. Like, I believe in the traditions from New England. Like, I'm not just a traditionalist. It is a New England specific traditionalist, because the things that took place in New England specifically, I think, are the foundation of this country. And I think they're also the foundation of the greatest society that ever existed. And I would go from basically the mid 1600s to about 1950, 1970, until it started to kind of go the other way here. And that a lot of that was based on like the scientific revolution, and all these things were based on using data, evidence, and all of these things to support your arguments. And that was the first time where science was used with religion, and it actually enhanced people's religious views. And that wasn't really done in the South. They kind of ignored all of that. And combining science with religion is very important because it grows people's faith, which keeps people in line. And it's very important to a society as a whole. So knowing that foundation came from New England, that's kind of the tradition that I want personally. That old New England, like, I'm not saying I want people dressed like milkmaids, and like, I'm not crazy about it, but it's more just getting back to our roots of why this was such a great society when it was, whereas now there's nothing distinct about where we are.
Right. I spoke at the State House back in a few times last year, and my talk was Massachusetts, the OG of freedom, because it originated here, and this is where religious freedom started.
Yep.
And I was up in Lexington today, and I was showing my friend came with me to assist me, and I was speaking at an event there, and I showed her where the first shot was heard around the world. I showed her where the Black Robe Regiment was.
Yep.
And she's like, wow. And I mean, they have like, the monument there. And I said, that's the reason why America is free today, that monument, and that event that happened. And it's really humbling that those events happened in our backyard, and it's sad to see that the condition, that was the original intent for this nation, what happened here in Massachusetts, and it was been twisted.
Yeah.
To the point where you can't even identify. You don't even, I mean, if you look at the, I don't remember the name of the church, but there's a church in Boston, where George Washington used to go to and pray. And you wouldn't even know that with all of the LGBTQ flags and the BLM flags that are on the church today. You would never know that. And so it's a shame that we've allowed these views to come in and really, I mean, the original intent of socialism is to get rid of God in society.
Yeah.
And so, it's a shame that has been quietly infiltrated not only into this nation, but also into where it had originated. And it has, I mean, you go to Plymouth, I went to Plymouth to do some work out there. And I mean, you would never know that was, it's all liberalized out there. It's wild.
Yeah.
It just like baffles me that that's where we are right now.
It's crazy. And what bothers me the most about it is how easy, like, we still have the infrastructure in New England to get it all back. We have so many schools, and we have like the amount of schools that New England has compared to other areas of this country, it's not even close. And we also have the whole idea of the town hall that didn't exist in the rest of the country. And I know nowadays, like, there are some like, I'm sure most towns across the country have some version of a town hall, but it wasn't even close to the same as the New England town hall system, where everyone in that town or small city or whatever really gathered together and talked about whatever issues, and they all really worked together, and it was true democracy. And when you have that much involvement with your local community, it's kind of natural that you're going to have a better society working together and less division on issues that there shouldn't really be that much division on.
Right.
And that's why, like, slavery was um, outlawed in New England far quicker than pretty much day one. Like Vermont, like black people were voting in Massachusetts before the Constitution. Slavery had already been outlawed in Vermont before the Constitution. So a lot of these things already happened. It was pretty much only Rhode Island that kind of sucked. Mm-hmm. But a lot of these things, because of the community, and I'm not saying that it was like perfect here. Like there were still problems, there was still issues, but there were far less, and there was a far greater sense of working together. The true feminist movement started here.
Right.
There's like one of the, like Mary, do you know the Windsor School in Boston? Have you heard of it? The all-girls.
I know of it, yeah.
Very, very good all-girls school. And Mary Windsor is this woman that started the school. And she's one of, in my opinion, she's like one of the like most amazing feminists of all time, like actual feminists of all time. And she had this great understanding of capitalism, Adam Smith, America. She had this great understanding of all of these things that were written in the Constitution that would allow women to have a lot of success in America. And she wanted to base her school around that. And you can go to her early documents about her school in Boston that has now become not one of the greatest women's schools in the country, but like one of the greatest high schools in general in the country. And no one even actually talks about what she believed in, because they can't. Because if they talk about what she believed in, they'll realize that it's now the exact opposite of what that school believes in. Like that school has gone down the whole like trans rights.
They'll lose their funding.
What's that?
They'll lose their funding.
Yeah. Well, they're a private school.
Private? They'll lose their donors.
Yeah. they're going to lose their place kind of at the, they're going to slide down. Like if you, I don't even know what they're doing. Like, I don't know if they're going to start letting males that claim to be females in, or if they're just going to let the females that are there pretend that they're males throughout the school. I don't know what their plan is, but it's not good. So like, it's not going to yield positive results is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And it's just too bad, because you have this amazing history of this amazing woman who wrote extensively about so many different things. And when you read some of her work, you realize that she had this really true understanding of the opportunity for women in America. And this was before women could even vote. This is late 1800s. And you realize that she's in our backyard. She started this great school, this great high school for young girls. And when no one talks about her, no one celebrates her, and the school that still exists kind of shuns her. They don't really shun her. They just don't mention basically
the original intent of the school.
Yeah. It's really unfortunate that we've gotten so far away from it.
That's a lot of the majority of the schools in this nation when they started. So like, let's say Harvard, for example. Harvard originally was a seminary school where they taught, people how to be preachers. And it wasn't until the corruption in the government that came in, and this is something that I'm still studying. But when the corruption of the government infiltrated the government, they paid the schools off. And they say, listen, we're going to pay you. You take this grant or whatever, and you have to go by this specific curriculum that we have. And it's the same curriculum that has been, I guess it's kind of like it's a bribe, really.
Yeah.
So it's the same curriculum for all the schools. And if the school doesn't take it, well, the school's going to suffer.
Right. And they the government still gives grants to certain, Harvard gets money from the government all the time. And it is like, hey, do this study and make sure you get this result. We don't care how you get this result, just get this result.
Right.
And so Harvard will go and they'll try to figure out how whatever the government wants to see, they'll try to figure out a study that yields that result. And it's so regressive. It's like the antithesis of what built New England.
Yeah.
And like what I mentioned earlier with the scientific method and basing everything basing decisions, political decisions, on data, evidence, and the results from studying anything.
Mm-hmm.
Using that to make your decisions moving forward was such a progressive thing at the time, because this was the first time in world history where you could really do that. Whereas before, it used to just be like the king. Like, you could find out that this was a bad way to do things, but if the king didn't care, tough luck. Whereas
Right.
this was sort of this new way of life, and it obviously yielded great results. And we've now gone back to the old way of doing things, where the ruling class says, hey, here's some money, do this study, make sure you find the results that we're looking for, don't come back until you do. And then they take that BS study or whatever, and then they try to sell it to the public.
Right.
And they're going to piss people off.
And you know what? That's been happening for decades. It's been happening for a long time. It's just now that it's coming to light, now that people are finding it now.
Yeah. And a huge part of Marxism, and Mao did this also. Mao basically took Marxism and applied it to China. But a huge part is infiltrating the school system. Mm-hmm. And they have absolutely done that. And I mean, it's even, a few of the people that I speak to on here have children in Catholic schools, and some of the things that I've heard going on in the Catholic, I don't have any kids, but some of the things that I've heard going on in the Catholic schools are it's just crazy.
Yeah.
And I sort of think that the Catholic schools or the Christian schools or the private schools would kind of be a safe haven from all of this madness right now. And I've heard from some of the parents that it's kind of the opposite.
Right.
Like, it's almost like they're worse, which it's amazing that it's gotten to be like that.
So I actually have a book that I'm finishing up now, where I talk about U.S. government and politics, and I also cover government politics and true U.S. history, and I do cover socialism on it, because socialism is one of the things, I don't want to say it's close to my heart, but it was one of the things I had the greatest interest in. And one of the things that you're saying is on their quiet cultural revolution, because they couldn't, and a lot of people don't know this, you couldn't come into the United States guns blazing like they did with Mao. You couldn't do it with China. You couldn't do that. You can't do that here because we're armed.
Right.
So one of the things that, and I'll list this off for the people that don't know, and I know with you, I'm preaching to the choir. But they have tactics that they learned in the Frankfurt School.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know this. And the tactics are blatant right now in our faces. And so one of them is creating racial offenses, continual change to create confusion, the teaching of sexual deviance to children, the undermining of institutional authority, promotion of mass immigrations to destroy national identity, promotion of excessive drinking, which is an interesting thing to put in there because they understood what alcohol could do to people.
Yeah.
Emptying of churches by the promotion of secular humanism, unreliable legal system with bias against victims of crime, expansion of public welfare programs, cultivation of left-wing media, and undermining the basic unit of society, which was a BLM tactic.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they literally have a strategic, organized playlist, for a plan for the United States. And when you look at the other side of that, the people that are, that are against this, we're not organized this way.
Yeah. Well, it's always going to be difficult because people always say the left and the right, and in reality, there is no right. That whole, I don't know if you're aware of like how they split up the in France during the French Revolution. They put the liberals on the left side of the room and they put the conservatives on the right. So that's where it comes from.
Wow.
But the difference is the left, the political left, has a unified goal, and that's this collectivist society based on communism, socialism. They're honestly, they're all the same. Even fascism. People say
Mhm.
fascism is right wing. It's not at all.
Right.
But it's they the left is unified on this goal of a collectivist society. The right, we don't really have a unified goal. There are some people on the right that believe in like a theocracy. There are some people that are like libertarians that are just like, yeah, legalize drugs, legalize weed, legalize everything. There's that group of people. There's some people that believe in like endless wars on the right. There's some people that believe in peace on the right. It's you kind of have this huge group of people on the right that have different ideas of how things need to be done. So there's not that unified collectivist goal that
Mhm.
exists on the left. So inherently, what you have to realize is, what is the one thing that most of the people on the right believe in, and it's this idea of basically just leave me alone, government, leave me alone. And
Mhm.
when you take that approach, which I think is the right approach, but when you take that approach, you're always going to be reacting to what the left wants. So the left is always going to be like, collectivist society, this is what we need to do, yada yada yada. And if you're one of these leave me alone type of people, you're going to hear that idea and you're going to react to that idea. But you're otherwise, until you hear that idea, you're just going to stick your nose to the grindstone, do your work, and go home and be with your family and take care of your private life. So you're always going to be reacting to the left. So we're
Right.
always going to be
On the
one step up.
defense.
Yeah, which is tough. But it's just the reality. We're always going to be reacting.
So what do you foresee for the state of Massachusetts? Let's say we do. I mean, that's tough because if we're always going to be reactive, like how can we combat a lot of the things that are happening here?
Long term, I think the best thing to do is, I think I really think we need to, I mean, I think of myself as more of like a radical than any of the left wingers that want communism, because I don't refer to myself as a conservative, because there's nothing about this system that I'm trying to conserve. There's so much corruption in this system. We have a horrible our education system in the world is relatively still decent, and there's still a lot of opportunity. But from what it used to be leaps and bounds above the rest of the world, and we're not even close anymore.
Mm.
Um, so there's nothing about this system that I'm trying to conserve. So I don't consider myself a conservative, or I wouldn't call myself a conservative, because I think that's the left playing word games.
Yeah.
Like, they call themselves progressive, yet they have all of their ideas are the most regressive ideas that have already been tried. So I won't allow myself to play their game. So the reason I say that is, when moving forward with Massachusetts, I mean, I do think we need to basically uproot the system. In an ideal world, if I could just like point my finger and make things happen, it would be to uproot the system, change the teachers. That's where I would start. There's no one that I have more animosity towards than teachers. And change the teachers, change the curriculum, and start from a place of understanding why the idea of America exists and why it worked. And I think if you start from there, good things will come. But it really takes a true understanding of the purpose of America, and we don't have that. And one of the things that kind of bothers me a little bit about like conservatives is we see critical race theory being blocked in Texas or Arkansas or Tennessee, some of the states where it's been shut down. And if you read the bill, like, it accomplishes some things, but if you understand what critical race theory is, you understand that it's simply just Marxism. And the playbook that you kind of mentioned from the Frankfurt School, it is the same exact thing. That's essentially what critical race theory, I mean, that is what critical race theory is. It comes from critical theory, which comes from that Frankfurt School. And so it's the same playbook. So if you have these teachers that believe that, it's only nominally about race. Critical race theory is really just about uprooting society.
Right.
So you can get rid of critical race theory, but you still have these Marxist teachers, and they'll still be spewing their Marxist nonsense. So you'll still yield the same results whether critical race theory is in the classroom or not. And that's why I think you need to start by getting rid, like, long-term solution would be start by getting rid of, or basically uprooting the education system. And on a short-term solution, I think it's stuff like this. I think it's getting involved with your local community, being more active. I think I've had kind of a weird religious journey personally with the Catholic Church, but I mean, probably not any more weird than a lot of people. Like, I grew up Catholic and then stopped going to church throughout most of my 20s, other than holidays and stuff. And even starting to going back to church has been a little bit difficult because it kind of, for me, the priest really matters and what he's saying and stuff. But I think it's putting pressure on priests to say the right things. And one of the North End priests in Boston, I was talking to him. This is probably sometime last summer, and he had like difficulty speaking about abortion because we're in Massachusetts. And I talked to him a little bit about it, and he understood why I felt the way I do about abortion, but he didn't really like touching on it during Mass. And it just made no sense to me, because that's like, people try to say that like religion and politics, don't mix religion and politics, but it's the same thing. Religion was basically the first form of politics. It really was. So when there's a Catholic priest that is unwilling to really express his views during Mass about abortion, like, I don't know, it's hard for me to get behind that. But to answer your question, I think the solution is putting pressure on these leaders in our community, whether it's a priest or a local official. I think it's really important to, honestly, like, I don't want to say harass, but like badger your local state reps, your local mayor. Like, I think it's important to do that. And it's easy to do that nowadays with social media. And so even if it's just like, I have Mayor Wu notifications on my phone. So I was on the phone with someone from work. I think it may have been yesterday or the day before. And I saw this notification, and I was like, hey, I'll call you back in 10 minutes. And so it was my manager. I hung up, and then I basically just went to Mayor Wu's Instagram page just to like bash her for 5 minutes. I went back to work. I was like, this is more important. But I honestly, stuff like that, I think you have to be involved, and you have to talk to your local leaders, whether it's a state rep, a priest, anyone with influence. You kind of just have to be involved with them.
I feel you on the Catholic part, because I grew up Catholic too. I'm a Christian now, but I grew up Catholic, and so I understand that, you know, where you're coming from when it comes to that. And so when the pandemic started, my husband and I, we were going to a Christian church, and um, all of the churches had closed down. And to me, that was weird because I was like, that's the one place where
Yeah.
you need to go and find hope. That's the one place where you find healing and scripturally. And so I thought it was really odd that they were all closed down. And then my church started to go pro BLM.
Oh,
We immediately pulled out and we said we can't be a part of that. And I remember keeping an eye across the nation on pastors who stayed open because these pastors knew their rights
yeah.
and they're protected under the First Amendment. You're not supposed to close you don't, if you choose not to close your church, you shouldn't close it. That's your choice.
Yeah.
And it's your right. And so there were only a handful of pastors that we already knew, that we were already kind of listening to, like via website anyway, that had kept their churches open. And one church, I was starting a podcast, and one church I found in Worcester, it was a Baptist church that had stayed open, and they got a lot of crap for it, but they were pro-America and they were anti-Marxism, anti
Yeah.
all of the stuff that was happening, and they stood up, and
Good.
they got a lot of crap from the city here. And that's where we were like, we're going there because
Yeah.
we're jumping ship, because these people understood their history, and they understood why, you know, their rights. And so a lot of people, and I did a podcast on this a couple weeks ago, and I got some heat for it, on the truth about 501c3s. And the reason why pastors and churches were not able to stand up to the government was because they had a 501c3, which handcuffed them from doing anything politically.
Wow.
You're literally signing your rights away to be tax exempt when you were initially tax exempt to begin with, according to the First Amendment. So President Lyndon Johnson had put a 501c restriction and told churches they needed to apply to be tax exempt if they wanted that benefit. But in exchange for that, you can't talk about anything politics. You can't be against the left. You can't have people on the right come into your church. Like, there's a whole, you can't be anti-abortion. You can't say any of that. So the pandemic was bad, but it literally weeded out all of the socialist churches that were out there and that didn't stand their ground. And that really helped us understand who to stand behind, because we weren't gonna attend a socialist church. And I have a ministry now, and I refuse to get a 501c3 because this is the nature of my this is
Yeah.
what I do. I talk about true US history. I love to talk about, you know, what God did in this nation, what the original intent of this nation is, and I can't do that if I have a 501c3.
Yeah, it's crazy. And this whole idea, I mean, America is a Christian nation. It was built on Christian values. And that's not to say that we can't have people with other beliefs.
Yeah.
But it would be the same as if me as a Catholic went to Israel and then all of a sudden had issues with anything Jewish. And people that come here should not take issue with anything Christian. And this idea that America is a secular country is just wrong.
It was actually Obama who said that.
Yeah.
And not to cut you off, but you know, Massachusetts was the first to start public school.
I did know that. Yeah. I actually did that only because of my Mary Windsor research.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
yes. You
yeah.
know about the old
They're unrelated. They're completely unrelated, but I deep dove into like the history of education in America when I was reading about Mary Windsor. It's like a rabbit hole type thing.
Yeah. So you know about the Old Deluder Satan Act?
I don't know about that.
So 5 years after they started public school, Massachusetts put a law in saying that the reason why they're starting public school was to teach kids how to read the Bible.
Yeah.
So that they could prevent having tyrannical laws long term and keeping the socialism out of the country. And
With women, they only went to school to learn how to read the Bible. They didn't even learn how to write. They just went to learn how to
read the Bible. So that because Christianity is the only, I guess I don't like to call it a religion, because Jesus really didn't like religion, and he says that. But like, it's a relationship. But the oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
What were we talking about? No, it was
the schools.
Oh man.
I was saying the history of the schools and like women. I mean, you weren't talking about the women aspect, but it was started in Massachusetts, and
yeah, I don't remember. Anyway,
do you want me to keep going until you remember?
No, yeah, no, it's okay. No, it's just crazy how that was the original intent of public school.
Yeah.
And I talked about this with Angel. Angel's on right now. He owns Red Liberty Media. I talked about this with him, and he's an editor for Project Veritas.
Oh, cool.
Where you can't, that was the original intent of public school, and they literally removed God from. I mean, that was the intention of socialism, is to remove God from the societies. Let's take him out of schools. Let's take him out of, the family unit. Let's tell people in school that in the homes, you don't talk about two things, and that's Jesus and politics. And those are literally the most important things to talk about.
One thing that you mentioned, you wrote in your email, it was a great way to phrase it, just like what we were going to discuss. You said how to, can't remember exactly what you wrote, but whatever it was perfect. It was basically like how to spot or how to recognize someone that is going to be like tyrannical, or how to spot tyranny or something. Or I can't remember how you wrote it, or maybe it wasn't even you. It may have been, yeah, I think it actually was her. Now that
you can write a lot better than I can.
So,
it
but
definitely
either
was.
way, she mentioned that, and one of the things that I always think of as it relates to what we're talking about right now is whatever the left is doing, you have to start from the assumption that it involves more state control. And so something like with the education system, like what is their actual goal? Even with like gay marriage, when this is the first time in Boston, so I went to college in Boston, and the first time where it was really like a wake up thing for me, because I was in a government class and we had to do a project. This is 2006, maybe 2007. We had to do a project on a current political issue. And there was probably like 20 kids in the class. And I did gay marriage. And then we were all going to have to present in 3 weeks, whatever topic we chose. And a few days before I was supposed to present, the professor told me, like, hey, we're not going to have you present because it might offend some people in the room. And I was just like, all right, fine. But that was, she wasn't like rude about it. And I would imagine it would be like way worse now. But gay marriage at that time was like a very hot button issue. And my entire perception of it wasn't like an anti-gay people thing or anything like that. It was really just coming from this place from like, okay, so marriage is like a sacrament of the church. Why would gay people even want this? Like, you guys you don't like this religion because it excludes you, but now you're trying to grab a part of it. Why would you even want that? And it didn't really make sense to me. And so I did this project on the gay marriage issue. And like some of the things that I remember writing about were like, it's not like they're seeking baptism. Like, they're not trying to allow the church to get gay people baptized or confirmed or any of the other sacraments. It's really just specific to marriage. Why is that? And where's this coming from? And then you realize that it's coming from the state. It's coming from them trying to empower themselves and basically turn the state into a place of worship for this group of people. And it's incredibly obvious once you point it out that it was all just about empowering the government. They don't care about gay people. The left doesn't care about gay people. They don't care about any of that stuff. They just care about anything that will empower them. And if they can target the easiest thing to target, especially for a voting bloc, which is all adults, is sexual depravity. So if they can target something as weak as our sexual desires and use that to empower a voting bloc for themselves, they're going to do it. And it turns the government into this place of worship, because it, like abortion, it turns a sacrament of the church into a sacrament of the government. And that's what gay marriage became. And to wrap that specific issue up, my position wasn't that gay people shouldn't be allowed to love each other, do whatever they want to do or whatever, but it was like, you guys should be marching to get straight marriage, to get the government out of the business of straight marriage. The government should have nothing to do with any of this. The entire purpose was to incentivize families to have children. And after World War I, that was the entire reason for all of this.
You mean like the tax benefit for marriage?
Yeah, that was the original. Yeah. That was the original reason for the government getting involved in the business of marriage. And we don't have that issue. You can't simultaneously want to incentivize people to have children while also advocating for abortion. It's a contradiction.
Right.
So when you know that contradiction exists, you have to question why. And it's really just because they want power over a certain group of people, and they're going to target people's sexual desires because it's an easy thing to target.
Even the flag too.
Oh,
the flag is the rainbow. The rainbow was originated with Noah.
I didn't know that.
So, what'd you say?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So the rainbow was God's promise not to flood the earth again. So God told Noah, every time you see a rainbow, know that even when it rains, that it's my promise that I won't flood the earth.
Wow.
And you see, what is the flag for?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of almost like a perversion. Like they tried to take the aspects of Christianity and make it a sacrament, make it their own sacrament. That's wild. The way that you put that is genius.
It's so it's just so clear that they are, so much of what they do is projection, and it's a direct response to the people that they hate. And they hate what Christianity has brought to the world because it's taken away their importance. And that's true on so many levels, even with the socialism stuff. The way the caste system always was is you have whoever is in charge, whether it's a king or I don't know what they call them in India where the actual caste system was, but you have them, you have the nobles, you have the merchants, and then you have the slaves. And the nobles was made up of this group of intellectual people, and they could also be knights or warriors or soldiers or court jesters. So you ask, who are those people nowadays? Well, those are professors. So those are professors, those are athletes, those are celebrities, those are the intellectuals that make money off of all of this stuff. So these influential people have now lost due to capitalism, these influential people who used to sell their worth based on their brain have lost their place at the top of society due to capitalism, because now you can be a farmer, just a silly old clueless farmer that can't read, but if you can sell 1 million stalks of corn a day, you're gonna be wealthy.
Right.
And so now it's devalued their intellectual capacity, and it's taken away their ability to control the rest of society. So now you have hard work over intellectual capacity, and they hate that. And that's why the left specifically that's why they own academia, because it's a bunch of people that are they've lost their place in social circles, social status, I should say.
Well, this has been an amazing conversation.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, I always appreciate speaking to like-minded people, and knowing that there are more people like us out there. And it's just a matter of educating more people and, rallying them together. Look, I'm thinking about putting my own anti-Marxist list together and starting a collective. Let's do collectivism. Let's, let's get organized like they are.
Yeah, you're right. We definitely need to get organized. I've been saying, like, a few people have asked me over the last few months, like, what we need to do. And we definitely need to mobilize more. And I think I just started following you a week or so ago, but you seem to be pretty active and doing a pretty good job. Have you found a lot of resistance in Massachusetts, or?
I've seen more resistant. No, I understand that a lot of people, there's more people that are afraid to come out. I would say more like even Latinos, they're afraid to come out and say anything for fear of losing their jobs or whatever. But in the beginning, I did like 2 years ago, more so with like family members or people that I know. But honestly, I said, if I'm doing this, and this is something that I feel like God called me to do. So I said, if I'm going to do this, he gave me a big mouth. So it's, go hard or go home. And I don't care at this point.
One thing that interests me about the Latinos and really the Black community is so many people will say what you just said, that they're kind of afraid to come out and say their feelings about all of this. And it's always kind of intrigued me, because you guys have a way stronger like Catholic base and Christian base than white people. Like white people have lost it for years. I know there's tons of like white Christians and Catholics as well, but if you go by as a percentage of like who identifies as an atheist, I bet white people have like the highest percentage.
Yep.
And the Black community is the same, especially in America, because so many of them come from the South where it was Christian. So a lot of the Black population in America now still has that Christian base.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have a strong, like, church has always been strong in the Black community. Church has always been strong in the Latino community, much stronger than the white community.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's always, I guess it's just hard because I don't know if the left just plays up the race thing so much that they prioritize race over religion. I don't know what it is. What do you think?
I think it's a single issue voter kind of deal, where they see one thing that's reported on CNN, and then that just becomes their whole, thought process. You can't vote based on one thing. You have to vote based on what are all the policies that this person believes in. And that's been gotten lost. And so that's why we're here. We're here to tell people you can't vote that way. You can't vote with, it's kind of like at this point, you listen to the media and you believe the opposite. Because you can't believe anything that they say. The same people that are saying, oh, well, the pandemic was corrupt, the reporting on that was corrupt, the jab was corrupt, the mask was corrupt, but then they believe all this stuff on Ukraine. And you're like, yo, you can't believe these people. They're liars.
It blows my mind. It blows my mind how, I'm sure you've seen like all the memes that went around, especially at the beginning of the Ukraine-Russia stuff, where it was like, okay, so 2 years of the media just lying about everything, and now they're telling the truth. And yeah.
And these people are back, and we'll probably get cut off soon because I think Instagram gives us an hour. So just giving you a heads up. But, it's kind of like then all of a sudden all the left, the most corrupt people on earth, the Clintons, Soros, decided to back Ukraine. I mean, if Soros said I'm a Christian, I might even jump ship from Christianity.
Yeah, at that point, you have to really question your value system.
Yeah, anything Soros does, you have to do the exact opposite. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, at this point, you just can't believe what, and I think maybe people now are seeing that. But it's just a matter of encouraging. It's okay. You can come out. It's okay to stand up for the things that you believe in. Let's call out these legislators. Let's come together. Let's talk about these things so that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
So my goal is to expose the gospel to people and say, listen, I want to see you in heaven. Have you accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior? Because I can see the book of Revelation unraveling rather quickly. And that's my goal, is to educate people on the true history so that they understand how to think about things, but also to let them know that Jesus loves them and he wants to see them in heaven. And that's all I can do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's all I can control. I can't control what everybody else is, what their intake is at this point.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And if people believe in God and that's all they fear, then all of this government tyranny is nothing. And that's what scares the government the most. That's why they hate religion, because if we believe in something greater than them, then we're fearless.
And that's why they got rid of that's why they put the 501c3 in.
Yeah.
Because they knew that the people of God in the Bible, they were going to line that up with policy. And they were like, these guys are going to ruin our corruption in the government. We can't have them speak on these things.
Yeah.
So there's a plan for it. And we need to counteract with a plan of our own that is collective and everybody is unified and say, let's get to work, because we can't just keep operating in the defense, like you said.
Yeah, you're right. 100%.
So let's do this again.
Yeah, definitely. It was fun. It was nice meeting you, nice talking to you, and thank you to the people that stuck around and listened.
Make sure you guys follow New England Traditionalist. If you follow me, follow him. He's the man.
Talk to you later.
All right, brother. Have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening and sharing the Rookie Marican podcast. If you would like to become a partner to hear more episodes like this, go to rookierevival.com. Thank you so much for the support.